Man.
I have a question for you.
What?
What do motorcycles, railroads, gunfighters, silver mining, and a war that nobody has ever heard of before have in common? I'm about to tell you all about it and what I stumbled into simply by riding my motorcycle, so stay tuned. In previous episodes of my low budget motorcycle camping adventure, I have been talking mostly about camping in and around the small town of Salida, Colorado. But today I want to talk about the history that I stumbled into while riding down the Arkansas River to find a new possible camp spot.
And we're off. Maybe. Gonna go explore maybe a few miles east. See if I can find an interesting spot to camp. Maybe we'll do some little exploring. You don't know. You never know. Had some douchebag up here in a pickup earlier, stealing my Wi-Fi. What the fuck is that all about, dude? So I took down my hotspot and renamed it. Instead of Moto Giant, it's Go Fuck Yourself. And of course I password protected it. And just a few minutes later he decided he was going to leave. I thought that was pretty funny.
Got him! Got him!
I was looking for some alternative camping and just doing some exploring for the day when I ran into what turns out to be some fascinating Colorado history. It combines so much of the history that I'm interested in that I figured I would tell you the story, because after all, I was riding my motorcycle when I stumbled into it. Apparently, this all started back in the 1870s, shortly after the gold and silver booms in Colorado and the West, and specifically the silver mining that was going on in Leadville, Colorado, just a few miles north of Salida. So it turns out they needed a way to get this silver out and miners and supplies in, so a couple of railroad companies started competing for the route up the Arkansas River. The two companies, the Denver and Rio Grande, and the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe, were competing at what turned out to be basically a war fought on the banks of the Arkansas River to try to be the first company up through what is now known as the Royal Gorge. At that time, the Royal Gorge was known as the Grand Canyon of the Arkansas River. And all this information, mind you, I found out after the fact, after I discovered the railroad bed that I was riding down just beside the newer railroad bed. I'm guessing that the other older bed that I'm riding on was the narrow gauge, or the original railroad that was finished in the 1880s. Bottom line is that apparently this route was so valuable and potentially profitable that the two railroad companies ended up fighting a war, a physical one and one that wound up in the Supreme Court. These two companies hired outlaws and lawmen alike to help defend their interests and try to compete to be the first one to roll up from Canyon City, Colorado towards Leadville and Silverton. And when I say war, I mean forts were actually set up in this canyon in the gorge to defend their rail bed from the other crews, and they would throw rocks down on the other crews. And they brought in legendary lawmen like Bat Masterson and the notorious Doc Holliday and Dirty Dave Rudabaugh to fight this battle for prominence in the gorge and the first to make it all the way through the canyon. This was not just a battle for land, but rights to the passage through this canyon. And it wasn't just a battle with stones, it also made it to the Supreme Court, who eventually ruled that the two warring parties would have to share the rail bed, and one leased from the other. They made them both sign the Treaty of Boston, which they both eventually violated this treaty. But eventually the rail bed was finished, and cargo, people went back and forth up the Royal Gorge. And most of it exists to this day. It's fascinating history, and I was glad to be able to take a tour of this beautiful and seemingly endless gorge on my way out of Salida. This day was just a day to explore to see if I could find some alternative camping. It turns out, however, that I was already in the best spot that I can find, and I decided soon after this trip that I was going to stay put until I left Colorado. It turns out that there were more than a few campgrounds on the river, and this is one of the more official campgrounds, equipped with vault toilets and picnic tables, but it just seemed a little bit cramped. Not a lot of people here, but it was a little bit warmer than I was hoping for. So after my brief exploration, I decided to roll back out and probably end my day coming to terms with the fact that this was not the best place for me to camp. I was already in it. But yeah, it was an extraordinary day wandering around the old railroad bed here, and just finding out that there was so much going on here in the 1880s. Just imagine a Supreme Court decision, a treaty was signed between the two railroad companies, and the outlaws that were involved. Just kind of a crazy thing. And I love the mining history that is all over the place up here. You can see the scars on the landscape. You can see the holes in the earth where the old mines still exist. But yeah, it was just a really nice day of riding around in the sunshine, and then later finding out that there was actually some really cool history behind the place. But yeah, after this I rolled back towards camp. But yeah, now this canyon, or at least the inaccessible portions of the canyon, are accessible by a very expensive luxury train that you can get on in Canyon City. Apparently it goes about 12 miles up and then backs up and goes back in the Canyon City. But in that 12 miles you can actually eat lunch or dinner and experience the 1,000-foot granite canyons that are closer to Canyon City than they are where I'm at here. But I would highly recommend that if you're on your way through Colorado, please don't overlook the Royal Gorge, because it is pretty spectacular, as you can see here. And this is just a small section of it, sped up for expediency and my ability to share this with you without having to endure 45 minutes of back and forth across the canyon. But yeah, lots of history here. There's lots of camping, like I said earlier, and fishing. Believe it or not, there were a ton of fishermen here, if that's your thing. If you carry a fishing pole on the back of your motorcycle, or if you're just riding through in an RV, this is the place for you if you want to stop and hang out. Some of the places are more difficult to get into than others, but it's here for you. There's bridges on both ends of that rail bed, so if you want to go out the opposite end, it's kind of a long journey, and I'm not sure I would recommend it in the larger rigs, but yeah, there's some opportunity here for you if you're into that. And otherwise, I will see you on the next low budget motorcycle camping adventure. Got quite a few coming up still.